What happened?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of VOX VOMITUS. I am your host, Jennifer Ann Gordon, the author of Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent, Pretty Ugly, and the very recently released The Japanese Box and Other Stories. Joining me today, as always, is my VOX VOMITUS vixen, or bear today. She's a bear today. She's a bear today. Allison Martine, author of The Bourbon Books, which includes Dibs, Since September, Move on Melinda, and Climb the Salmon Ladder.
Bears eat salmon.
Bears eat salmon. It comes full circle. Joining us today from a secret location in the same state that I'm in is Mr. Paul Tremblay, here to talk about The Beast You Are and other things, of course, which is why Allison's a bear, and people who are watching us on video, I'm wearing some kind of ears. Wolf, maybe.
Well, thank you. I wish I dressed up, but I...
No,
you don't need to. You wrote the book that inspired us to ask the burning questions today of which one is Allison and which one am I, Mags or Meredith?
Oh.
And I feel like that is a good opening question. But we should actually start more with, can you tell us a little bit about your collection, The Beast You Are, and then we'll get to the Mags and Meredith question so people know what we're talking about.
Sure. So The Beast You Are collects 15 stories, and it's a pretty, like, from a distance, an odd bunch of stories, maybe, because there's some like really long ones and some very short ones. So 14 of them, I guess, would be considered short stories, and the 15th story is a novella, and it's the title novella. Has the same title as the collection, and the novella is an anthropomorphic animal epic, told in free verse, the freest of all possible verse.
Yes.
And I'd say, like, briefly, the theme would be, with beast in the title. Not every story has a monster or a beast in it, but many of them do, or maybe sometimes it's the humans acting monstrous, so a loose theme as well.
There's a lot of self-discovery with the characters in this entire collection too, which I loved, and maybe discovering they might have a hidden monster inside of them.
Discovering there might be a bear in Allison's case.
Yes.
Well, and to get back to it, I've read other works by Paul, and we've talked to other people who had collections, and one of them recently had Vince. I'm going to get his name. Lagano. Vince Lagano on for Dark Rainbow Rising, Unspeakable Horrors 3. And Paul had a short story in there, which was one of my favorites. And there was a bear in there. So I'm like, I'm just bringing bears back because that's also another beast to bring it in here, because we didn't have Paul on to talk to him about that because we just had the editor for that book. Right. So now I'm just like bringing in all of these. And we didn't have you on when Growing Things came out, and I still have questions. So I might be raising my hand about unrelated things that Jennifer's like, stop it. We're not on that book.
Like, we're not on that book, and my memory is terrible.
Paul's here.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, great. No, I was honored to be in Vince's anthology. Again, honored that he asked me to participate. And I ended up, I'm in a Airbnb rental right now on a lake in New Hampshire. So last summer's rental became the setting for Vince's story. And I did actually see a bear while I was up there.
Did you really?
Well, so when we read your bear story, when Vince was on the show, it was just a couple weeks after I had looked out my window at my house, and there was a bear like 2 feet away from my window, and I was like, completely overwhelmed, and I'm like, I'm a city girl. What am I doing out here now?
Now, Lisa is my wife. Lisa is terrified of bears, and of course, TikTok serves her like all like bears breaking into people's houses videos, which makes it worse because she's like, they can open doors.
They can open doors. They can lock themselves in your car.
Yeah.
Like a serial killer, and then you won't know they're there until they pop up in the back seat. I know because I saw that on Instagram.
That's terrifying. And I love bears, but no.
So
I also love them because I don't live in a place where a bear is just going to show up. But my kid goes to a camp where bears do just wander in, and they keep telling you, close the door all the way, because then the bear won't wander through looking for snacks.
Right.
I mean,
gotta cover the trash. There was a bear that had wandered all the way down like just south of Boston and actually was sighted in the town that we live in, which is ridiculous. Like, how is there a bear in our town? It was on the other side of town, which actually was more sort of populated. So yeah, the bear's coming.
Yeah. So Well, we're excited to see whatever you come up with next year to ruin another vacation spot in New Hampshire. As a New Hampshire native, I always let out a little shriek of kind of joy / terror every time I see you post like in New Hampshire, and I'm like, oh, he's going to write something terrifying about that.
But that's why you live in New Hampshire. Don't act like this is like, oh no, I'm scared of this. That's why you're there. That's on brand for you. You live in a haunted house, and now you're going to be scared because there's bears.
You're scared of wildlife, yes.
That's true. Well, I think the scaredest texts I get from Jennifer are when there's something in the closet. It might be a bat. Like, I like bats, and Jen's like, it's in my closet. So I get it. So if you need some inspiration, I can just forward you texts that Jennifer has sent me late at night when she can't sleep.
Yeah, well, I'm almost sure I'll take them. I'm almost more afraid of bats at this point after doing Survivor Song because, like, if you wake up and find a bat in your bedroom, you probably should, just in case, get like a rabies vaccination because, like, if a bat, I'm making bat.
I know, making fangs. People are like, they don't know what they're doing. People who are listening are like, what are they doing?
Yeah, because a bat could bite you and you wouldn't know because their teeth are so small. But they could still give you rabies. And if you start showing symptoms for rabies, it's too late.
It's too late. Yeah. A couple weeks ago, I was at a different place in New Hampshire where I was staying to work. And there was a bat in my bedroom that I was staying in. And I screeched and ran out and closed the door. And then I immediately was like on Google looking it up. I did text you. It was the middle of the night. So these are the texts she's referring to. And I was shocked when it was just like, if you are even exposed to a bat, you should get a rabies shot. And I'm like,
because it looked at you.
Yeah, no, if it just looks at you, you're probably okay.
Yeah, I think it just looked at me. I wasn't asleep and woke up with it. I walked into the room to go to bed. And
if it's like in your hair and like just flapping around in your hair, then get the rabies
but I'm
shot.
picturing this completely differently. Like you're sleeping and then you roll over and there's a bat smiling at you in the pillow, like, I got you.
I got you. You didn't even feel it.
He's like, hello.
This interview has gone off the rails.
Yeah, but there were no bats in.
There are no bats in the beast.
There are
no bats.
Stands. There are rats.
There are frogs. There are little dogs.
Yeah.
Mean cats. Pencils. Giant monsters.
Bookstores. Libraries, of course.
So, Paul, when you came up with the idea for the novella, The Beast You Are, you pitched that to your editor or your agent or whoever you pitched that to, probably your editor. What did they say? Did they say, why free verse? Why anthropomorphic?
My fun answer is like, I don't know, because I never pitched anyone. I just did it and then showed it to them once it was done. I did the old don't ask for forgiveness, not permission kind of thing.
Yep.
Part of it was.
Did you ever say the words in your head? I'm Paul frickin' Tremblay.
No. So with that story, the bones of it have been kicking around in my head for a while, but I was like, really, I think for the first time in my life thought, oh, there's no way my publisher would let me publish a book like that. So I just sort of pushed off the story for a while. And then the spring of 2020, when we pitched the Pallbearers Club to try to get a new book deal, I assumed, and hoped, I shouldn't say I assumed, I hoped they would offer, two books, Pallbearers Club and then the next novel. And I was surprised that my editor, when she made an offer, she's like, we want the Pallbearers Club. We want another collection, which I didn't pitch, in another novel. So it's like, another collection? Oh, no.
I just used all my stuff in growing.
Yeah, I was like, really? Really?
Where am I going to find other things? Oh.
It's like, I guess I have a few stories that, in the years since they've been published. But then I was like, oh, I could, to have something that hasn't been published yet or before. New for the collection. I was like, oh, I can do this anthropomorphic animal thing. I'll do it as a novella. So I was very excited to sort of sneak it in that way. Well, thank you. And it works much better. If it works at all, it works much better as a novella. So when I turned it into my editor, she's like, oh, did you write any original stories? I was like, yes.
As a matter of fact.
Yeah. She was
it takes
funny.
up half the book.
Yeah, well, I know in page count, probably because of how it's spaced out with the stanzas and whatnot. But like word count, it's 30,000 words in the collection is probably like a shade over 90,000.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because so Jen and I had different experiences with it because she had the physical book and I listened to it, and I just have to applaud. You had a great selection of narrators, so each one had a different feel. And I didn't know it was free verse because reading it, she was just reading me a story. So
Right.
I think for anybody who's like, I'm not sure I can look at something like that, then listen
Yeah.
to it. For people who are like,
I'm
I'm
not sure I can look at
weird.
something.
Look, I'm sorry. There are people
I
about
know.
various things who are automatic no's about certain things. And I read a
Yeah.
book a while ago that I really enjoyed, and somebody else was like, it didn't have the right punctuation because it didn't use quotation marks. Didn't bother me because I listened to it. So it's kind of
yeah.
the get around. But we will talk more about The Beast You Are. But as far as you have a story in this book that has another automatic no for a lot of people, and you nailed it.
Oh, second person?
You wrote in second person
Yeah.
for the last, and it was both of, I'm pointing.
It's both of our favorites.
It's as
Thank
far
you.
as the shorter ones, it's both of our favorites. And I've never
I
had a
loved it
second
so
person
much.
POV work so well. And there's a reason why it works. And I don't want to spoil it for people, but if people are like, I don't know about second person, or it feels like it's a choose your own event, it's not.
It's not a choose your own adventure, but if it was, that would still
I'd
be
still
cool.
do it.
Yeah. Well, I
I would
already wrote my choose your own adventure for growing things.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, I mean, I don't want to like consult people listening to this. Like, I don't know why as a reader you would have any sort of rules. I mean, obviously you have like your personal likes and
There are people
proclivities.
I know who are like, I won't read first. I won't read third. I won't read things in present tense. Stares at my books in first person going, whoops. You know,
Exactly.
it's there are people who are like that. And it's
Yeah.
fine if an editor chooses that they don't want to edit something that way because it goes against their personal preferences. But I feel like readers are just selling themselves short if they just close off entire ways of authors expressing themselves. So
Right. You
Yeah.
probably should keep that to yourselves.
Yeah.
No, there are
honestly,
zip
because
them.
I'm going to judge you. Like,
Oh,
It's
I am.
funny, like
I judge people when
my
they're
first-
like, I just don't
my
do that.
yeah, my
Really?
first experience with novels being published, you know, my detective novels, and
Mhm.
it was, I don't know, maybe it was just coming from the horror world where it seemed like there were less rules about that stuff. You know, in the crime world, I saw a lot of reviewers like, oh, it's first person present tense. Like, it's like,
Yep.
what's wrong with that? Like, it
dare.
works. That's
As I have a
that's-
book out on sub in that,
Right.
it's also in the crime world, and my agent's
Mhm.
like, this is going to be a tough sell. And I'm like, why?
Well, from the writing perspective, you know, as a writer, I thought that was the best way to tell the story. Like, you know, it's not just like, oh, I'm going to write a second person story, or I'm going to write first person present tense. Like, as I'm sure you both know as writers, you know, everything is a choice. Like, and that choice has to serve the story. So,
Exactly.
It really
by the
put
end, like,
me
the last
in his
conversation-
shoes.
yeah, it's only
Like-
going to work if it's, you know, second person. The story had to
Exactly.
be told that way.
Exactly. And I loved it. And I was stumbling over these before with Jennifer because we've decided we are always going to say something is edited by, or the editor was, because when we say who edited it, it just
I know.
is impossible to
We're
say.
like, who
But-
edited that story? And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, geez.
The editor for that one was Blake Crouch. And I am a new reader of his because my agent used him as a style comp for me. So I'm like,
Oh,
well, now I
okay.
got to go find his stuff. And I read Recursion, and this had big Recursion vibes. So if people are like, oh, I like that, you need to come read this story because I can see where the two of you are like, yes, let's get our hands on this. It definitely had some Recursion flavors to it. And I loved how it worked here with the characters and the setting. And for people who are like, oh, I can't read horror, this story isn't horror. This was a speculative collection. The cover is very horror, though. I will say that. The cover. Jennifer, hold up the cover. I mean,
And here, I never thought of it as being too horror.
the
and I'm
animals have like yellow eyes, and it's red, and it looks like they're devouring each other. Tell me that's not a horror cover.
I just have different
Or
standard.
it's Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom
Seriously.
anthology. Yeah.
Yeah.
But most of them shouldn't have, oh, I don't know, ominous glowing yellow eyes, just as a thing. But yeah, I loved because the fact that you used so many different stylistic choices. I love when I get to read a collection that you're doing free verse and you're doing something in second person. And I don't even know how to describe what you're doing in The Large Man with the repetition and then how you use that to tell the story and how you use that to convey the story near the end. I don't want, again, it's hard to not spoil some of the
Right.
things you do there, but I loved that with the I am, Mr. C does this, Mr. C does that, Mr. C goes over here. I am Mr. C. I went over here. I did that. And I thought that was just a beautiful literary device. And I feel
I
like
love repetition in work.
me
Like I
too.
do.
I know.
Well, there's a rhythm to it. Then to me,
is.
it almost becomes a song.
Mhm.
Right.
And like in the best way, like an earworm, like it's stuck in your head. And I'm not just saying that because I do a lot of repetition in my work, but I am saying it because of that as well. And I'm defending it to the death.
I will fight for my repetition.
I will fight for it. It doesn't need to be a rule of 3. I can say something 4 times in a row.
No, I mean, it has to be at least 3, though, in order for it to have that. Because otherwise, if it's just 2, it just feels like, did you realize that you used this word twice in a sentence? And then the editor flags it. So you have to have it be enough to be the poetic repetition. And then you get into like the biblical thing of say it one way and then say it another way, where Jewish poetry would do it a certain way. So it's like, it doesn't always have the same rules either, but it has to be enough that that their ears and like their brains catch it. Otherwise they're just like, couldn't he have found a new word? Meh. And you don't want those people. Those people are annoying.
Yeah.
But if they buy the books, that's great.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, book sales are great. I want to talk about Lemonade.
Oh, yes.
Or, I'm like, I'm
haunted
house tour,
oh,
one per person. This gave me a lot of pallbearer vibes.
It did.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, so, I wrote that. I wrote that before Pallbearers Club. It was first published in Ellen Datlow's Echoes, which is this giant mammoth, like 900-page, amazing anthology of ghost stories. Yeah, because not a spoiler, like the protagonist is very much, if not me, a stand-in for me. Sort of this writer who's looking back at what had happened when he was like 14 or 15 because his mom had given him a box of his old like baby and school stuff, and at the bottom of the box was this weird picture, and that seeing this picture unexpectedly or drawing,
that drawing is terrifying.
Yeah, my poor daughter.
I know. I'm like, so this is like the second time she has done something that has inspired a work of horror, because it's her photo in your in your hallway was inspiration for Head Full of Ghosts, right?
No, I think just in retrospect, it was like, oh my God, no, this
is the picture in there?
What's that?
Is the picture in the book?
The illustration. Yep.
Oh,
Allison. Okay, you'll have to send it to me later because
I know. I'm like,
do it. They
that's right, because you listen to audio. Right.
I should have like flipped through it when I finally found it after I'd already gotten it, because the first bookstore I went to didn't have it on the day it came out, even though I was bothering people. So I just ended up getting it on audio because I am impatient that way.
Yeah.
I'll show you the picture after we're done live.
Yeah, show me later.
I think I wrote that story like maybe going on 6 years ago at this point. And so that was a picture. My daughter Josh is like, oh, I have nightmares every night, and this thing is there every night.
And when did she start?
Oh, that's terrible. Can I use this for the story?
Yeah, and you're like, oh, I'm just gonna borrow this.
Yeah.
Not even saying something like maybe we should sage the house, or maybe it's something bothering you at school that you're just like, oh, I'm just gonna take a photo of that and commit that to memory.
And then we'll start her therapy later. It'll be fine. Yeah. She's fine. She's doing fine.
Yeah.
She's doing fine. She just graduated. She's good. She's healthy, normal girl.
Still having these nightmares, is she?
She's going to be a studio art major. So there you go.
She can try new terrifying things for everybody. I love it.
Absolutely.
Is it weird that I saw the drawing and I was like, oh, I kind of want a tattoo of that. And then I'm like, oh, but that story really did scare me, like in my soul. Yeah,
then you're like, in your own body. And you know what? I look at my own body in the mirror and I'm terrified enough without putting scary things on it on purpose. I don't need to do that.
Maybe next time I'm in New Hampshire and Emma's with me. Because she's been tattooing for about 6 months now.
Oh, shut up! I'll let her do.
Yeah, she can do a free tattoo.
Me. I'll just like whatever she wants to put on me.
Yeah.
It's like, here's what I was terrified of when I was 12. And you can't see it, so you're always trying to like look, going, what is it? Did we figure out which one of us is Marjorie and which one of us is Meredith?
Yeah, Max and Meredith, like.
Yeah, so Matt, our hosts are referencing.
Yeah,
and if I say weird stuff, it's still concussion. So that's my excuse.
That's fine.
But
that's fine.
Yeah, so you two are talking about the two main characters of the Beast You Are novella. Meg is a dog and Meredith is a cat. And this has no overt bearing on the novella, but I did sort of in my head, I was naming them after Marjorie and
still
Mary
are, yeah.
from A Head Full of Ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it would be finally fun to have, because all the others, I've probably done like 3, 4-ish, maybe more short stories featuring Mary and Marjorie. And Marjorie's always sort of like the evil-ish kind of character. So I thought I would flip it this time, you know, give Marjorie a chance to be the hero or the quote unquote good
Just
person.
like, how dare you? Like, no, that's not correct. Maybe. I love how they keep showing up, and then I always have this Easter egg squeal whenever, like, I know these girls, because they show up in Growing Things, and obviously they are the main characters in A Head Full of Ghosts.
Right.
And it feels like sometimes it's just them again, and other times it feels like it's an homage to them, where they are both themselves and a stand-in for themselves. And I love that, because I don't know really any other author who does that, where I can keep revisiting these characters who had the one story, and then they're just like, hi again, I'm still here.
Yeah.
Well,
thank
that
you.
was honestly, that was like my favorite part of Survivor Song, is meeting up again with the boys from Disappearance at Devil's Rock. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you.
I love them.
I know these guys.
Well, thank you. Well, you
Paul
know,
still
I mean,
didn't give us an answer, but
yeah.
whatever.
Well, I'll answer it in a second, but I will say, like, that's sort of what Allison
like
was
you're
just
both
saying.
Meredith.
Like, for me, it is fun to sort of go back and visit those characters. Like, I don't think I would ever write a sequel to A Head Full of Ghosts, like a full novel sequel, unless I was really financially in straits. So never say
That's
never.
an honest answer, you know?
However, I thought it would be cool because of the nature of Mary and Marjorie's relationship, how they would tell each other stories. I was like, oh, I could still do stories that the two sisters would tell each other.
Yes.
You know, so one, it would scratch the itch of hanging out with those characters again, but two, it wouldn't impact someone who had never read A Head Full of Ghosts. They'd still be able to read the story, and the story is the story. Yeah. So as far as who's Mag and who's Meredith, well, I don't know. Like, what do you guys
tell
do? You
us.
consider yourself a dog person or a cat person? That's an important
Well,
question.
I definitely consider myself a dog person,
Okay.
but I don't know what that.
How about Allison?
You know, and I had both.
She's like
growing
neither.
up. And I'm like, what's the weird animal you don't know what to do with? Like, where's the guinea pig just squeaking in the corner? That's me. Or I'm probably the little frog. But so I said I was going to mention Growing Things. I haven't read any of your work in probably the intended order, because I had not heard of you till Jennifer's like, we have Paul Tremblay for Survivor Song. I'm like, you're going to have to explain more than that, sweetheart. And
I'm like, he's one of my automatic
I know. And
buys.
she's like, I've been stalking him for years. Okay. And I loved the first book. So then, of course, I'm going and reading things in all sorts of order and reading it not probably in the order. I read Growing Things before I read A Head Full of Ghosts, because Growing Things was available and Head Full of Ghosts wasn't when I was like looking for it. And then I listened to the author notes, and for short stories, I love that. And I got to the end of Growing Things. I was listening to the notes, and I stopped listening to the author notes because it's like referencing A Head Full of Ghosts. I'm like, haven't listened to it yet. So I'm like closing my ears up. And the 13th Temple, that story still sticks with me. I feel like I need to go back and reread it now after I've read this other stuff, because that one kind of ties in too, in that way that it was told. Again, a very unusual story. I know we didn't have you on for Growing Things, and I know you have a concussion. Do you have anything you can tell me about the 13th Temple? And if your answer is I have a concussion, then I will ask again later.
Yeah, it's funny. So I mean, that to me almost is like a sequel stand-in, because you do pick up with adult Mary after the events of the book. You know, it's almost a framing device for the story itself, where she is at like San Diego Comic-Con or some big convention.
That was so funny.
you know, there to greet fans and sign books, and then a fan sort of breaks into her room,
holds her hostage.
Yeah, but she sort
Don't do that, fans.
Yeah, no, but she sort of flips the tables on the fan. So I mean, if you had read A Head Full of Ghosts, that makes you think about her a little bit more. But then she tells the fan this weird story that she says the story that Marjorie had told her. I don't know. I really like that story. That one came from. It started as a story first, a tower story about people building like slowly towers bigger and bigger in this weird sort of out of time village.
Coming down.
And Mary and Marjorie sort of showing up came later. I was like, oh, you know, who's going to be in the story?
Mary and Marjorie.
After like, you know, I just had the images of these like weird, poorly built wooden towers, And then, a lot of stories start that way. You have an image and then the first question I ask, well, who's there? Who's in this? Yeah.
Yeah.
Regina's confused. What? Who is flipping the tables now? What did I wander into? Me asking off-topic questions. Sorry, Regina.
There are no off-topic questions here at Vox Vomitus.
Yeah.
We have the word vomit in the title.
I know. Well, when I've read other stuff and we have you on for certain things, but not other things, and I'm like, I have you here. I can ask you the questions now. And my sister, who is probably working right now and will listen to this later, is super jealous because you are her favorite author.
Oh, that's so
I'm
nice.
like, this is the first time that I have introduced her to somebody new. So finally the tables are flipped where the little sister is telling the big sister what to read. She's
cool.
She's the one who was like pushing me to read things that were too scary for me. And I'm like, I don't want to. And she's like, Stephen King, this isn't that scary. So again.
Well, thank you. And hi, big sis.
Jennifer, yes.
Thanks for listening.
Hello. And
hi, Dana.
But yeah, I loved that story and how it was, but I never finished listening to the author note because I was like, head full of ghosts, need to go back and listen. And then I did, and I'm like, okay, I get who's who in the beginning, but the towers, and I was like picturing like the Watts Tower and some of these other things, these basically these monuments that go and serve no purpose other than humanity has this need to build them. And it's one of those stories that sticks with me. And the other one is the one about the birds. And that one, I think, has given me so many nightmares.
Oh, wow.
Birds scare me. Jennifer loves birds. I send pictures of her. I'm like, look, here's a cocktail. I'm backing away slowly from the bird.
I'm an animal person.
You are, but that story is probably not for animal people.
Oh, I know. There are books that I just can't do because I am an animal person. I was scared of The Beast You Are because I'm like, oh no. Because I still am very, I have like emotional scars in my brain and in my heart from Watership Down.
Which was one of the inspirations of this book.
I know. And then when I read the author notes, I'm like, that tracks.
Yeah.
That tracks. As does The Secret of Nim, because that was one of the ones that was a formative one for me. And then there's another one for me that I don't even know if anybody knows this because it's one that my mother for years convinced me didn't exist. She did that with a lot of stuff for me where she's like, you never saw that. Stop making things up. And then later I would find proof. She's like, oh yeah, you weren't supposed to be watching that. Was pretty much always the answer, which was Rock and Rule. Did you guys you are familiar with Rock and Rule?
No, never heard of that.
I want to say it's Canadian and it was done in the really early 80s and I never was allowed to see it, but it was on this show, Lights, Camera, Action, hosted by Leonard Nimoy. And okay, Regina's like, what about the Neverending Story, The Horse in the Swamp? That's why my child isn't allowed to watch that. And same reason she can't watch Guardians of the Galaxy 3, even though she's watched everything else in the MCU, because it's like, it's just an extended Sarah McLachlan arms, the arms of the angel, eyes of the angel, whatever. It's very, very sad. But Rock and Rule, again, it's anthropomorphic things and kind of this, in that case, like a post-apocalyptic world. And the only thing I could remember was this line, my name is Mock, thanks a lot. And it's like a little rock star thing. I'll have to send you guys pictures of it later. I swear I am not making it up.
Yeah, sounds really cool.
Small release. It was animated. And people are like, are you sure you don't mean Cool World? I'm like, no, that was later. I didn't, not Roger Rabbit.
I'm shocked that I don't know this because I feel like being so close to Canada, we got a lot of like.
I want to say it had some of the same people in it. I want to say Debbie Harry was in it as one of the characters, but I could be making that up. That might be some Blondie moments in my head here, but I have a very special place in my heart for like the anthropomorphic animal thing and the way that you created this world in The Beast You Are, where like my brain was trying to track where things were and it could, but not ever perfectly because it's told over a period of time. So people who haven't read it yet, it's not like, oh, it's set in this little slice of time. It's over certain slices throughout years and watching how their society progresses and everything from, oh, they're anti-vaccination and they aren't getting their rabies shots. Again, we're back to Survivor. So clearly rabies trauma. You have a lot of rabies trauma there. I get it.
Yeah. No, nice reference to rabies. Well, no, it's funny. I wish I included, I think every author dreams at some point of having a book that has like a map in it or something. I think my first start is like, oh, I should have like 3 different maps, one for each of the ends of the 30-year time periods. You can sort of see how the village changes. But after the design ask and mess of the Pallbearers Club, I think my publisher hadn't recovered yet. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to ask them for maps.
You're not going to do maps after you had to have all these things crossed out and little lines going.
And in red.
I just hope they recover in time for a novel I haven't started yet, but I'm thinking about that is going to be another sort of design-esque.
And that one's just
we'll
going to be
see.
called Maps, Maps, More Maps by Paul Tremblay.
Yeah. It's
Well, and Regina
the
says-
Dora the Explorer novelization.
Oh, nice.
On the map.
We would probably like that though.
Yeah.
Regina says, coincidentally, I'm making cats out of wire today. So yeah, I mean, if you want to make the whole book out of wire, that would be a design ask that I don't think anyone wants to do. Like,
Yeah, I'd always joke that there's going to be sort of like a, an adult book until there's one pop-up page that jumps out at you.
Yes.
look, they aren't that hard to
That'd be
make.
hard to hide though, because you would see like
You'd
on
see
the
it.
outside the spine. Wait a minute, there's some sort of little gap here. What's that all
Weird
about?
here. Everybody's doing this in the bookstore.
Yeah.
But then I think you get more sales that way because people will be like, I need to know why it is this book is exploding.
And especially
Yeah.
if we could, I'm like your marketing team and me and Allison, if the book was like shrink wrapped, like,
Oh, yeah.
like old school.
Oh yeah,
So then
Right.
people can't open it.
interesting.
And then they're going to think it's pornography.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, wrong.
And that
on
would be very embarrassing for you,
Oh,
Paul, probably.
yeah.
If it's a pop-up,
Yeah,
A pop-up pornography horror novel.
yeah.
no. But that and the fact that like
We've got my career mapped out. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. that's a different kind of pop-up map.
Yeah.
Like, don't do that. Well, it brings up the whole thing. Like I said, I listen to it, and whenever you listen to a book, you get some really awesome things about how the narrator is bringing it to life. But you do miss
Yes.
things like there wouldn't be a pop-up in the audio unless it's the narrator going, "Hey, guess what?"
And there's just a
Yell
jump
at you.
scare.
Yeah, jump scare in
Yeah.
the novel. Like, don't do that.
I will say a word about the audio. I'm glad you enjoyed it, and my publisher definitely goes above and beyond with the audio sort of versions. Because as you mentioned, they got so many different narrators, and they brought back some of the narrators from some prior books, like I think Grandma Halstead, who did Art Barbara for the Pallbearers Club, is narrating the opening story. High
Makes
School
sense.
Lemonade, Crossout,
Gosh. No.
and Z Sands. I hope I'm saying her first name correctly. It's spelled Z-E. I believe she's the narrator for The Beast You Are, and she narrated Head Full of Ghosts. I don't typically listen. Sometimes I dip in just to see what it sounds like, but I did listen to A Head Full of Ghosts from start to finish on like a long drive to Pennsylvania. And it was, I don't know, it was a little weird. It's like, man, I wrote this, really? And
Yeah.
then she would dip into Mary's voice, and it brought chills, like, because she sounded like an 8-year-old girl. It's like, I don't know how she did it. So anyway, yeah,
Did it
no,
well,
I'm
'cause
very,
that one I listened to too.
very fortunate that so many wonderful narrator performers for my audiobooks.
Well, and you mess with different styles in ways that again wouldn't necessarily translate to audio if they were completely done, because there's one that you have where it's a pitch for a comic book. And were there any pictures in that part of the book, Jennifer?
No.
Okay,
No.
but I loved it.
I
because
wish,
you
yeah.
describe frame and you're like, but it would be without any of these words. So
Right.
your brain is doing the mental gymnastic of trying to imagine how this would look based on only words, saying,
Yeah.
but it wouldn't have any words in it. And I loved that because I don't think I've ever encountered something like that either.
Oh,
I
thank you.
haven't encountered it as a story, but as somebody so for years I owned a comic store. I wrote some indie comics,
Oh.
but I don't draw, so I
Yeah.
would be describing, like, it's that process,
The
like
panels, right.
to the artist, like
Mhm.
it's this, like
Can you try
here's my script, but I know there's not any words on these 4 pages.
that?
Go.
Mhm. Make
Yeah.
this thing.
Well, I don't really know how to write a comic script, so my workaround was just to have him like describe it like in a pitch, like in paragraph form. If
But
I
think
was,
everybody
if I was
writes
confident how to
comic
do a
scripts
comic
different.
script, I probably would have written it as a comic script.
But it still worked. I
It
mean,
still
I
worked.
still really enjoyed the story, and again, it has beasts of sorts in
It
there.
does.
But I like to have how you did different styles for all of this, so that it wasn't like, okay, now here's a story set in this place. I mean, your different styles, your different genres, because some of these things are horror, and some of them are more speculative and less horror, more just like, what is happening here? I'm trying to find the name, House of Windows.
Mm.
Yeah.
I love that story, even though
It's
I'm
like
like,
architecture
I still don't know what
horror.
it is. I'm going, I don't know what this is, but I like it, and I like how the librarians are just happy people are in the library. They're like, hi. And they're like, stop encouraging them. Hi,
Yeah.
come and watch whatever's happening. We don't understand why this is happening, but the premise that you start with of like, that wasn't there before. Was that there before? And that unsettling thing. I still have like a story I probably won't ever write, but I think about is we live in a cul-de-sac, and in the cul-de-sac next to ours, it's very similar, except on the far side at the end, there's a house that is 2-story when none of the other ones are. And then next to it in the property by itself is a garage, just a garage. There is nothing else there. We have no idea why it's there. So I'm always thinking every time I walk by there, like, what is going on with that? And the whole idea of there was
a murder garage for sure.
It's a murder garage, or that something happened in the house has just been sucked into the world and it's just gone. And you kind of addressed the opposite side of there's now just something here and it's just getting bigger and everybody just has to kind of deal with it. Like, why is here? Why is this building here? Nobody knows. Does it have permits? Lights are on.
I know. Does it have permits? Is really great. And there was, I feel like one of the most chilling lines in that story, and this is not really a spoiler, is when somebody says, that wasn't there before. And somebody else says, before what? Yeah. And I was just like I just got chills again just saying it. I'm like, before what? Oh, it was just like such a heavy question.
It's the Mandela
that could mean
effect
anything.
And Berenstain Bears thing all together. Yeah. Like, well, who is it there for? And who is noticing the difference? Because I feel like there are always those little changes in our world. And are we even aware of them? And sometimes the changes have to be big enough for us to notice. And then other times we just never saved it correctly in our memory. So it's like, wait a second, when did we change how this was doing? That's always been that way. How come I didn't notice that? And it just, our brains don't record things correctly, and then we ascribe it. Must be a system fault somewhere else, not in here. I'm sure for me it's
right. Well, it's like, the observation principle sort of at the non-quantum level, whereas the act of observing changes things. It's always, it's just fun to think about and play around with.
Awesome. Well, Paul, the book is fantastic.
Thank
so
you.
Everybody who hasn't read it or listened to it, go out and buy The Beast You Are, or listen to it, or get it from your library. Just get it in your bodies somehow. We don't need Paul to have to, do some weird book thing just to get money. You've got to buy the
Or you can also go to your library, though. You don't have to
go to the library.
These libraries are the best. Please use them.
Libraries, they may have weird buildings next to them.
That's right. Yeah.
Just be careful when you go. Yeah.
Well, that's what happened. Like, the start of the story was I was visiting my cousin that I'm very close with, has worked at the New York City Public Library forever. Although she works in the HR sort of department. She's not a librarian. But I was meeting her there, and I was like, and I just had the moment of, obviously my brain didn't remember something correctly because there was this building, a small building next to the library. I was like, what is that? I was here like 9 months ago. That was in my memories, like, that wasn't there before. How is that there? Why is that there? So that plus my, my love of House of Leaves, the expanding house.
Yes.
Was, a fun way to sort of play with that idea, but in a different way.
It was great.
Thank you.
And we can't wait for whatever your next book is. I mean, I'm on your newsletter, so I know the title of it.
Well, there'll be since we're talking, a book of short stories, in a month there'll be a new short story out from Amazon, their Amazon Shorts program.
Nice.
They're gonna, I think it's September 26th. They're gonna release what they're calling like Creature Feature. I think there 5 or 6 authors. I think there's 6 of us. They just started announcing it, so I think we can say this. If not, I'll just be like concussion.
I think you can say it.
The National Book Award winner Jason Mott is writing a story, and then there are 3 sort of horror folks, people you would associate with horror anyway. I think it's Jeff. I was gonna call him Jeff Malerman. Who the hell is Jeff Malerman?
Who's Jeff Malerman?
That's his brother.
Jeff. They're letting his brother Jeff write a book.
Josh, if you're listening, you should totally do like a Richard Stark, Stephen King kind of thing. Jeff Malerman is your angry doppelganger. You now have.
I told Josh he should write a kid's book under the name Josh Meowlerman.
Oh boy!
And he's like, maybe I will.
Maybe, yeah. So I know Josh has a story. Grady Hendrix has a story, and so I wrote a story called In Bloom. And we were supposed to take a trope or a known sort of monster from horror as sort of like the basis of one of our stories.
Can you say what yours was? Is it Swamp Thing?
I don't want to say because it's a little bit of a spoiler. But it's a star of like a 50s B movie.
The other
fun
creature
part
double feature.
Yeah, the other fun part, well, for me was my dear friend and a brilliant writer John Langan is a major character in the novel, except he is renamed Jimmy Lang.
Nobody will know who it is at all.
Yeah, no, he's a poet, cartoonist on the Cape, and he also has a boat and like charters rides and stuff. Yeah. So good old
Well,
Jimmy Lang shows up.
I love how you steal all these people and you're like, and I put him in and they put me in their book, so I'm sticking them in my book.
Well, John has, done it to me more than once. So I definitely owed him. And in fact, I think the last time he did it, it's a really disturbing, terrifying, frightening novella that John wrote. It's the last story in Ellen Datlow's Final Cuts anthology. It's a wonderful book of stories all dealing with movies. It's really good. I highly recommend it. And his is the anchor novella, Altered You, Altered You, Altered Me, Altered something like that is the title. I'm terrible with titles and concussion. But I'm the main character, except he names me Gaeton Cornichon, which I thought was very cruel.
Gaeton Cornichon?
Yeah.
Cornichon are the little pickles. He called
little
you
pickles,
little pickles.
yes.
And everybody knows how much you love pickles.
Yeah, Gaeton is my middle name.
That's what the G stands for, is Gaeton?
Yep. Paul Gaeton Tremblay.
It's very French. Very French.
Oui. It was funny when John finished that story. He was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, like, because I do some really awful things to you and your family." I'm like, "No, this is amazing." And actually, in that story of his, he's a character too, and we're sending emails back and forth to each other within the story. Like, he so nailed my voice; it was a little bit like I was a little bit self-conscious. I was like, "Oh man,
is that who I am?"
Yeah. So anyway, so I get to do that a little bit to John in this story.
Well, it's a huge compliment. He calls you a little pickle.
Yeah, he got off easy with just Jimmy Lang.
Yeah.
Seriously, that's almost complimentary. Like, Jimmy, it's a little bit of a diminutive, but you didn't call him pickles. So
Right.
You didn't call him pickles. There's no pickle anything involved there that we know of yet.
Right.
Well, and that's going to be in Amazon Shorts. I don't even know how to get Amazon Shorts.
Yeah. So I mean, if you have Amazon Prime, I think you get it for free.
Because I know some of the stuff I get, they're like, "Hey, you want this?" I'm like, "Yes." I don't know how I got here, but sure. I just click buttons and things show up.
So I think Prime members get it for free. Otherwise, you can either buy like the whole bundle of stories, or you can buy each individual story for like $1.99.
That's very cool.
Yeah. So it also, you can get it through Amazon and audio. So there won't be any print version through Amazon, just the digital and audio.
Works for me.
Works
I
for me
rarely
too.
have time to read with these things. They don't work so good. This is how I take my words.
Yeah. That's how with the concussion, I haven't been able to, or I was supposed to not to read, and I wasn't. So yeah, I've been doing a lot of audiobooks in July and into this month. I miss reading the physical book. I've been trying to dip in a little bit, just a little bit at a time.
Take your time with it though, because honestly, it's not
Be good to your brain. That's
Be
your
good to your brain. That's the moneymaker right there, Paul.
Yeah.
Whether we're talking about, like, for people who don't know, Paul's also a math teacher, so that needs to be able to add things up and geometrize or something.
True. I know. I'll be back in school in just under 3 weeks now, because I had the last year off, which was very nice.
Yes, you had your sabbatical year.
Yeah.
Oh, you are going back this year then?
I am. Yep.
He's like, I am.
I am. Well, my kids went back today, so the fact that you weren't back yet worked out for me. And my children are back.
I forget that other parts of the country start way earlier than we do.
We start stupid early, and then it's really hot for the first 2 months instead of just a month and a half. But we stay hot from August till always, because it's Southern California and it never gets colder.
I was going to say, I don't think it gets cold where.
It really doesn't, but we sometimes are saying November ends up being the hottest month of the year sometimes, and then it kind of cools off for a few months. But so it's not any worse having them in school in August, because it's not better a couple months later. Yay, global warming.
Yeah.
And on that uplifting note, Paul, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your vacation.
Thank you. I'll say you too. When you have a vacation. Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not going on vacation until November.
Yeah.
I know, but I was just on vacation in July, so it's not like
I'm
not like
we'll be here before you know it.
Yeah, I'm good.
So, but thank you. Enjoy New Hampshire.
Thank you.
And everybody who's watching this live or watching it on the replay, stay tuned next week. We have May Cobb here to talk about, she is awesome, talk about her recent release, A Likeable Woman. And if you remember, loyal viewers and listeners, last time May was with us, she got hot sauce in her eye.
Oh my God.
We are excited to see what she's going to do this time.
So the bar is raised.
Wow.
Like, don't do that again, May, please.
She's like, in the most Texas thing ever, I've got hot sauce in my eye.
Wow.
Love it.
She's spicy.
Spicy. The books are spicy. Her eyeballs are spicy. So
I can make no claim to spiciness. I'm bland. I'm Gaetan Cornichon.
I know. I'm like, you little pickle.
You're a pickle.
Oh, someone's just earned himself a new nickname.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
Paul's like, why did I tell them that?
This interview's over.
Yeah. Bye.
And on that note,
Yeah.
This interview is over.
We'll bring in Jeff Malerman to finish.
Jeff Malerman and Little Pickle.
Yeah. Bye.